Well, good evening. This is Dr. Ellithorpe from Tustin Longevity Center on Talk to the Doctor. We are a functional medicine integrative practice of five healthcare providers, and we like to make this available as a question answer time for generalized educational purposes to help our patients have another venue or their family and friends to just discuss questions they might have on current events about health and the integrative questions that might be bothering them or they have some concerns about. We have a practice here in Tustin, California called Tustin Longevity Center. And people can, if you're on YouTube and signed in, you can type in your question in the chat section. And then what we do is we read them and we try to answer them as the best we could if we were to, in general, approach those issues. We have the talk available so that we can try and be helpful, but this is not meant to replace your time with your doctor, or if you have something specific, if you happen to be one of our patients, we can generally respond, but we will ask you if it's a specific issue to please call the office at 714-544-1521 and or text us at that number 714-544-1521. And we can specifically pull up your chart and address your questions. So we meet here at 6 o'clock weekly between 6 and 7, where we try and respond to your questions and current healthcare medical issues. So the first question that's starting to come in is from Debbie. Debbie says, "Hi, Dr. Rita. My coworker, 40-ish, I guess in age, not overweight, has inflammation in the ankle and family history of gout. He does intermittent fast besides a low carb diet. What else should he do?" Well, I would go on a fast for 2 or 3 days and just not eat anything. If I had any kind of a illness whatsoever, in the animal kingdom, animals will stop eating for the first day or two whenever they're injured or ill. So drinking lots of water is promoted when you're fasting, and you could have some chicken broth or beef broth, not bone broth. We're talking about just the clear see-through liquid of chicken broth or beef broth. But a water diet would be the best. And then I would try and find some systemic enzymes at your health food store. We here at the clinic have Vascuzyme, Proteozyme, and Vitalzyme. These are all systemic enzymes which are anti-inflammatory. Bringing the body to a low inflammation state promotes healing. Water, good hydration always improves healing and time. So if you could have the person with any acute inflammatory problem fast for 2 days, then drink plenty of water, and then take enzymes 2 or 3 times in that period, then there should be a significant improvement. Plus, of course, they should consult with their healthcare provider, have this looked at, make sure it isn't a missed bug bite or some other splinter that they didn't realize they got stuck, and they're having, cellulitis or a bacterial infection or something like that. So that's the direction I would go in. And then, if they could find a functional integrative doctor who would figure out their blood type and help them to look at their triglyceride, their fasting insulin, their average hemoglobin A1C, sugar sticking to protein, fruit sugar level called the fructosamine. These are very helpful in understanding their metabolic state. If they may be doing intermittent fasting, but they might still have what we call metabolic syndrome. And so I would have them follow up with them. Debbie then goes on to ask another coworker who's also in shape in the 40-ish range, has high blood pressure, and he was told to avoid salt. Is that true? And what else should he be doing? Thank you. Uh, Salt is not the enemy. There are salt will retain water. Water will expand the blood volume and put more resistance, pressure into the closed system of the vascular system. But really, what needs to happen is to find out why he has moved into a state of high blood pressure in the 40s. If they are not overweight, you could be what we call thin on the outside, fat on the inside, or what we call TOFI, thin on the outside, fat on the inside, TOFI. And so a laboratory test that would look for triglycerides, fasting insulin, hemoglobin A1C, fruit sugars, these kind of things, liver enzymes, will show whether or not they might be thin on the outside or looking as if they're in good shape. But in fact, chemically, biochemically, they are in poor shape. This is very common in the SAD American diet, the standard American diet, where we're eating this processed foods, pollution, heavy metal laden, glyphosate, genetically modified, high carb, long shelf life food scenario. And these triglycerides get plugged up in the capillaries, and the insulin surge thickens the blood vessels themselves. Literally, the insulin will not only make you fat, but it will thicken the blood vessels. And this is really almost never brought up by the healthcare provider. So that would be important to get a fasting insulin, fasting glucose, triglycerides, hemoglobin A1C, HSCRP, sed rate, fructosamine. And then in light of that, with a chemistry panel looking at his sodium, potassium, and maybe some other markers on kidney function, adrenal function, then we would have a better idea. Maybe he needs or she needs a ultrasound of the liver to see if there's fatty infiltration of the liver, which would show metabolic syndrome starting, which is really presets most high blood pressure cases. So have them try and find a integrative physician, a doctor who practices with looking at diet and body composition, and is aware of the value of maybe chelation therapy. If they know about that, they could call or look on the computer for ACAM, the American College for the Advancement of Medicine, ACAM, acam.org. Or, there are more and more clinics developing. Doctors are really trying to catch up on their failed medical education and catch up on all their nutritional physiology and stuff like that to be better health. But so I don't see that salt is the problem. Rather, I see people having too little water in their diet. They're drinking other things that are marketed to them as if we're just all lab rats who respond to social media, Instagram, TikTok images of what everyone last ate, what they're drinking, stopping at, stores that market frate, latte, sugared up drinks, and they're not drinking enough water. And when your body finally has enough water, then it will have less vasoconstriction and it will allow more normalization. So drinking adequate water is very, very important. If you saw a functional doctor, they would be looking at your mineral status and see if you have enough magnesium and potassium and so forth. So that's where I would begin with someone who is newly diagnosed with high blood pressure and still looks thin. Your outward appearance doesn't necessarily reflect your inner metabolic appearance. Robert Pinsky says, how A guy went to a psychologist because he couldn't stop putting small doll clothes on the flowers in his garden. The psychologist figured out and he had plantar fasciitis. Plantar fasciitis, fashion. Oh, is that cute? So a guy went to a psychologist because he couldn't stop putting small doll clothes on the flowers in his garden. And the psychologist figured out he had plantar fasciitis. Very cute. Very cute, Robert. That's a sweet gift of this health freedom tribe that we have here at TLC. God bless you. Thank you for the humor. 6 Million says, hello, what is your thought on GAPS diet? And also, what can someone do for eczema, especially in toddlers? Eczema really is a essential fatty acid deficiency in these toddlers, and they are not digesting well. They might be getting, the standard pasteurized homogenized dairy, which is ruinous and inflammatory to the gut. That inflammation then transits into the skin. The linoleic, alpha-linoleic, essential fatty acids are almost absent in the American diet. Instead, we have all this hydrogenated shelf life storage junk food and snacks they give them. And these saturated omega-6s are destroying them. So we would ask the parents of toddlers with eczema to put them on what we call whole foods, get them away from grains and dairy that's been processed with homogenization and pasteurization. So vegetables that are cooked, proteins, fish, turkey, chicken, beef, and that they would not have any of these processed food, packaged food, snacks whatsoever. And then ultimately, they would do very, very well to see a holistic doctor who could do some gut health repair, find out their blood type. If they're an A-type toddler, they need help with digestion, even if they're an A as a child. If they're an O-type toddler, they very often have an exaggerated response to genetically modified grains and the homogenized dairy. So I would do that. I would get on a whole food diet, no packaged food, avoiding grains and dairy, and cooked vegetables. And I would, if they were to have anything sweet or a treat, it would be a piece of fruit and nothing else. And that's the direction I would head with them. So, of course, if we were seeing them, we would do a complete digestive stool analysis. We'd find out their blood type. We would do some essential minerals and food sensitivities that are developing on laboratory tests. But that's how I would approach it. The GAP diet. I remember hearing the GAP diet, but 6 Million, I just can't for the life of me right now recall the essence of a GAP diet, what that stands for. So I can't actually tell you what I think of it right now. If you could write a little synopsis of it, that might trigger my memory on that. Let me see if I have my other computer here, if I could look that up. GAP, G-A-P, I presume it is. So we'll go to GAP diet, the GAP diet. Let's see, it's loading right now. GAP diet, what is it? Uses, effectiveness, and food guide. The GAP diet theory says that eliminating certain foods such as grains and sugars can help people treat conditions that affect the brain, such as autism. Oh, Well, yeah, I guess you can give it all kinds of names, but I've already been describing the GAP diet in a sense. So yes, but not only the grains and sugars, I would take the dairy. So I would say it's on the right track with, and I would be in support of it. So hopefully that helps you, 6 million. All right, Dolores McConnell says, "Hi, Dr. Rita. How are you?" Okay, uh, I'm blessed. I still get to go to heaven. Jesus died for all my sins, and I've sinned a lot since last Monday night. So I needed a savior because I can't stop sinning every day in some way, some shape. You know, Proverbs says, "Even the thought of foolishness, it is sin." And I've certainly had a lot of foolish thoughts. Anyway. So I'm doing okay. We're looking for those doctors to help while our other two doctors who are on maternity leave. And thank you for your prayers. Thank you for asking the Lord to send us a God-fearing and good doctor. And interestingly enough, we have someone who used to work with us and is now asking about maybe coming back part-time right at this time. So I don't attribute that to coincidence. I attribute that to the prayers that we and our patients have lifted up to the Lord to help us do the right thing. So hopefully maybe someone will be here very soon, and that'll be a great relief to me so that I can get some rest from working 6 days a week. I heard you state that coffee is good for the brain. Is there certain coffee? Oh, is there a certain coffee you recommend? I appreciate all you do. God bless. Well, yeah, there are coffees that work to promote the idea that they're mold free, and that let me get this out of the way here just a second. There we go. That they're without contaminants, and they are not a mixed bean. Some coffee producers will just take beans from various sources and put it all in one package. There are companies out there that work very hard to avoid the molds and the toxins in production and are kept individual so that it is a pure product. Of course, you pay more for it. What do I use? My coffee of choice is Peet's. Peet's, Peets, and I use their Major Dickinson's flavor. So that's what you have to do is when you look for coffee, you want to try and see if it's a pure brand and if it is raised to be well aerated so it doesn't, incorporate mold and so forth like that. And I use Peet's, Major Dickinson's. Let's see. The next question is 6 million. Gut and psychology syndrome. Yes, right. We have for decades, 6 million. We have for decades been associating mental health, emotional health with gut problems. And there's this whole philosophy that all disease begins in the gut because it's an entrance place for so much of what we do in eating, exposing ourselves to the world, to toxins and heavy metals that fall down on the ground, and pesticide, herbicide, too many carbs, just quite a lot. And so we have always been doing this work to try and do elimination of foods. Food itself, plant food, plants are really not natural to human beings. Let's put it that way. We're not composed of cellulose. We're composed of protein and fat. So animals and fish and chicken, poultry, pork, crustaceans, these would be much more assimilated into the construction and repair of what we're made of. So a carnivore diet is what you would call the ultimate elimination diet, because you eliminate all the plant problems. And what are the plant problems? Well, number one, we're not made of plants, but we do eat plants for some fiber, although there's no requirement for fiber. Number two, we eat plants and we get some starch for energy, although we can generate glucose with gluconeogenesis. There are micronutrients and there are minerals in plants. And so these are the arguments for them. And then I'll leave the whole animal kindness and abuse as a separate issue. But we're not composed to plant. A pure plant vegan, a pure plant vegetarian ultimately has to work very hard to avoid micronutrient deficiencies, some B vitamins, some of the fat soluble vitamins, and some of the trace minerals as well. And meat, fish, chicken, turkey, pork, crustaceans, these kind of things are dense, rich, the most nutritionally packed, even containing vitamin C. So the ultimate elimination diet is a carnivore diet. Now, then you have to ask, which animals are you going to be consuming? Are you going to go to the industrialized farmed chicken groups and the industrialized farming for beef, where they are locked up and shot up with drugs and growth hormone stimulants and antibiotics, and they are fed grain when normally they would not be eating grain? And then you are what you're eating ate. This is another term. You are what your eating has eaten. And so when we talk about a carnivore diet for healing and elimination, we're talking about all wild, free range, prairie raised, carnivore based sources. And the gut then is made of one layer thick cell membranes, so that if there's injury, there is where your immediate need for protection is. So there is an inflammation that will make you emotionally irritable and anxious. So yes, 6 million gut and psychology syndrome is well established, and we've been practicing this for decades here, and it's very valid. Hi, Tiziana Travanti. Hi, glad to see you joined us. Yes, one of the certified mold-free coffee is called the Bulletproof Coffee. Yes, all right, so you're correct on that. My son uses that one. Talon uses Bulletproof Coffee. So there was a whole big craze about Bulletproof Coffee because it was incorporated into developing intermittent fasting, meaning skipping breakfast. So you would add the MCT oil, the oil into the coffee or butter. And now they've turned it into quite the science. But yeah, it's a very high quality coffee bean. And yes, Karen D says, hi, Dr. Rita. Do you know anything about naltrexone to help with inflammation? A friend was recommended this by her doctor. Thanks so much. Yes, it is involved in the receptors to calm them down. Naltrexone, low dose naltrexone, usually is given at a 4.5 milligram. You could go to a 4, 3.5, 3, 2.5, 1, So the low dose seems to, when used, act as a cell membrane calming agent, especially neurochemical active cells. And this is then associated with an improved sense of well-being. Now, that doesn't mean it's solving the problem. It just means it seems to be a less toxic, less total dose chemical burden for achieving this kind of sense of well-being, calming, and so forth, anti-inflammation. But in cooperation with a doctor who is familiar with it, who is doing alongside this, maybe this gut kind of repair work, eliminating other sources of inflammation in the body, helping with natural hormone repair, helping with adequate hydration, detoxing the person, possibly vitamin C IVs, possibly chelation therapy, ozone therapy, hyperbaric oxygen treatments, just doing a lifestyle addressing of all these things. Low-dose naltrexone alone as a single item, I've really never seen do the work on its own. I've seen it be helpful in conjunction with a whole approach. So yes, I am very familiar with it. And yes, it does seem to have benefit, but really they have to be in the hands of someone who's familiar and who is also understanding to incorporate another parallel track with it as well. And so, let's see, are there any, what's the next question? No more questions at this time. So hopefully all of you are calling your congressman. Last Monday, at the end of the Monday night thing, I went over this paper here about the California state proposed laws that are up on these 10 bills that are about to be voted on, and maybe some have already. I think, there's many different bills here. And the site that I'm going to here is called unityproject.com, unityproject.com. And the Unity Project is just tracking these kind of legislations. So what we would ask you to do is go to Unity Project to see the list of all these laws. And they're very concerning in that it starts to remove doctor-patient privacy, where the state would then be allowed to just come in without any warrant or rationale and just go into a doctor's office and start examining their records. They would be able to take a doctor to the board if they don't carry the party line of the health department interpretation of what is good health or good ways to deal with things. This is moving away from the entire concept of what medicine is. Medicine is supposed to be a private relationship with your doctor, and it is supposed to be a application of the experience and knowledge of all the training that doctor has, along with, if they feel they need consultations, to give to that unique person the approach and the management to try and relieve them of their illness or stress or problems that they're dealing with. This is unique to the patient-doctor relationship. And we have the training and licensure to be able to take a medicine and adjust it to our patients, use off-label use. I would say about maybe a fourth to at least 20% of all prescription medicines are used by physicians who use them off-label because in their clinical experience, they've been able to help their patients adjusting the dose or finding another approach for the use of some medications. So these 10 bills are in unityproject.com. There's another doctor who does a very fancy healthcare program weekly. His name is Peak Prosperity, P-E-A-K, second word, prosperity. He's a physician on YouTube. And so if you go to YouTube and you type in Peak Prosperity, you'll see his March 24th, let's see, the 28th? Maybe it was the 21st, because anyway, the title of his subtitle is Legislation Destroying California Healthcare. That's the title of it. So he does a beautiful online walkthrough on each of these. And it does bring up lowering the consent age to 12 for a child to accept medical interventional treatments like the experimental COVID injections. and so forth. So there's several here of grave concern. So hopefully you all will be looking at this. And then with the other thing on this Unity project is the phone numbers of all the sponsors in the California state legislature, of the representatives and senators at the state level. They're listed here with their office number. And so we need to call them and say, vote no on these 10, and then list them there. I know they're getting calls because we've been calling, and I've been trying to inform my patients. Let's see, another question came in. Tiziana said, Dr. E, what do you think about the legislators making the time saving permanent? Could this affect our health? Legislators making the time saving permanent. I'm not familiar with where you're going on that, Tiziana. Could you explain in another little addition on there? Legislators making the time saving permanent. I don't know what you're getting at there, so I don't know how to reflect on that question, Tiziana. The other thing is we continue to see rather wonderful, dramatic clinical outcomes here at Tustin Longevity Center. Glioblastoma multiforme is a cancer of the brain that is very serious and uniformly life-threatening. The prognosis is very poor, like 1.5 years survival rate. Anyway, long and the short of it is, all these years we've been pushing the ketogenic, insulin-reducing, low-carb lifestyle, because insulin stimulates growth of tumor cells, and that especially the glioblastoma. And all of our glioblastoma patients that we nutritionally, immunologically support alongside their oncologists, all of ours live years and years and years and years and years. So we just have another one that's doing quite well. We also have him doing, and they've all been doing, the EDTA chelation and the vitamin C high dose with this. I have a new YouTube that I'm recommending my patients watch. It's on YouTube, and it's titled, I keep a little list of my YouTubes that I would like people to watch. And so I updated this, and it says the new one on the top is Tech Update 2019. Tech means Trial to Assess Chelation Therapy. And here there was a recent lecture put out by Dr. Lamas, who is the cardiologist chief at Cedars-Sinai on the East Coast, who ran the Trial to Assess Chelation Therapy, the NIH-funded study where they did, 50, 60,000 infusions, placebo-controlled, double-blinded, and they found a dramatic, life-extending, event-reducing cardiovascular risk reduction for all the people who did the chelation therapy. So I think you all would like to hear about that. And of course, we're always very excited to talk about how all our patients have done well over the past 2 years. None were hospitalized, to my knowledge, and certainly none died due to the concern of the COVID. And the other thing is, then there was concern about side effects due to the injection for the COVID having spike protein produced. But with our way we approach our patients, and so many of them doing chelation, we found that even those that had done the injection for COVID, they actually, even though they had maybe some neurological impact or vascular upset, none of them were permanently injured and did quite well. So we continue to see the fact that EDTA, the amino acid of chelation that pulls out the heavy metal toxins that are oxidizing free radicals that your body doesn't normally have any effective means of catching up with your rate of accumulating them. So you have a net increase every month and year of your life, because it's in the air, it's in the water, it's in the food, it's even in the organic foods. And this anion negative charge of the EDTA is attracted to the cation positive charge of toxins. Well, wouldn't you know it, the spike protein itself is a positive electrochemical entity. So we do believe that we're having an impact with people who are long COVID or having some vascular concerns from this as well. So the name of the YouTube is TAC Update 2019, TACT Update 2019 by Dr. Lamas, Lamas, on YouTube. And it's 15, 16 minutes long. It's well worth your while to watch that. Let's see. Sorry, I meant daylight savings. Oh, okay. The U.S. Senate voted to make daylight saving permanent. I'm concerned that it will affect the circadian rhythm. I'd have to look. Yes, the circadian rhythm is extremely important. If we keep the daylight savings times permanent, will it? I would have to look at the data on the impact of the daylight times and our sleep sequencing and so forth. So I do have concern. If we look at the government, that said there were no weapons. There were weapons of mass destruction, and we got involved in wars. The same government is the same one that said everyone should have the injection for the swine flu of 1976. And after 25 to 50 deaths, they pulled it. It's the same government, that is saying that, we should continue with these injections that are experimental, adding on a fourth or fifth. Now, the fourth was just approved as a booster, a second booster, based on Israeli results. And if you read the paper that they're quoting from Israel, it actually does show that it was ineffective. It's as if they don't think no one will read these papers they quote. So I am dumbfounded to think that the same group of people that promote this and have to talk out of both sides of their mouth, why would anyone trust government at this point with so much errors and so much deceit? It just seems incomprehensible to me. So am I going to trust them to have the competence to understand the impact of daylight savings times? It's the same government to the McGowan conference on the cholesterol heart disease hypothesis of the late 1970s, where the committees were talk about bias covering up science. The science was covered up on saturated fats and health, and they had a predetermined outcome. They were going to destroy fat. They were going to destroy meat. They were going to destroy butter. They were going to destroy all these things for marketing and shelf life work. Why? Because my father was working at Armor Food Research as a fatty acid specialist, and they and other PhD professors of biochemistry were sending in all this material saying, this is premature. You can't attribute cholesterol to the cause of heart disease for so many different reasons. And these were blocked. They didn't get entertained. If you go watch that YouTube video I often put out called The Oiling of America, The Oiling of America. So they wanted to get you away from butter and saturated fat, and they wanted you to use seed oil. Now everyone is finally saying the truth, that seed oil is absolutely cancer promoting and destructive. And so you have to understand why I have such a second guess of anything to do with government in anything, because they're not the people who work the problem all the time. Government was designed to protect our borders, and if they can't do that, then what good are they for making any other decision outside of trying to do a protection of our own national sovereignty on the borders from invasion. Anyway, that's a little off the track, but that came up with being told the U.S. Senate voted to make daylight saving permanent. I got to look into it. I think I missed one. Garden Fairy said SB 920, that's the one for California. Okay, viewing of patient records has already been pulled for the time being. Oh, that's a blessing. That's a blessing. So our patient privacy is being, but it sits there just like the Patriot Act was already written before the towers were struck by the airplane. The Patriot Act was written and in full blown, and those thousands and thousands of pages were then saying, hey, we have this law. Why don't we do this bill and vote it through? Because we had such a risk from the towers being hit. How convenient was that to have that done? So, they have these things sitting there, and they keep on pushing this envelope to see if we will forget our Constitution and the rule of law, our republic, which is we agreed upon set of laws constitutionally, and that any other legislation that is written is supposed to be within the context of those laws and not abridge them. Our Supreme Court is supposed to make sure any of these laws don't abridge what we all agreed on. And so I think the invasion of your privacy, having someone without cause or warrant to do this, is breaching your privacy. And there you go, right back to the Constitution. So anyway, such is life. Let's see. So we got that. I'm glad SB 920 has been put on the sideline, but we got to stay vigilant, folks. Harlow Spencer. Hi, Harlow. God bless Dr. Rita. Love you. We love you back. You see, you are the people that really matter in your personal home, with the people you're talking to, with your family, your friends, your children. How you're eating, how you're living, the care and the love and the respect you have for them and their private spaces and their property. You are where it all begins. And if we don't take care of you, if doctors like me don't understand our responsibility to be there for you, there isn't any hope. And so I want to try and raise doctors up and support doctors who will be a part of training doctors. It's not about the money. You're going to have a decent lifestyle. You'll have a decent home, but they've turned this into some kind of ridiculousness that just because you have an MD, you're supposed to make some god-awful amount of money. It's ridiculous. I will tell you, when I was a very, very young doctor in the late 70s, starting out, I was on a mentorship program at Chicago Medical School. So I was assigned to a personal doctor. And if he got called in the middle of the night, I went with him. If, every patient he saw, and I got to hear him think, talk, and feel about the politics of the day and the problems of the patients and everything. And this man's office didn't take insurance. He actually did cash. And a routine follow-up patient visit was $2.50. This is in the Chicagoland area. And then a new patient was $7.50. And even when I worked in the emergency room as a brand new doctor, I was only paid $15 an hour. $15 an hour in the 70s. So we are messed up. We are being driven down some false inflating system. I thought it was a privilege to have such a special job. I was grateful for my income, and it was in Kentucky. It was in the back area of Kentucky, so it was no wealthy hospital, a group of people. But it was the respect, the family, the relationship, the church, everything was just wonderful. And the schools I brought my boys to, it was such a beautiful community. It was a good enough paying job for me. I had a nice little home, very modest cost. And we have to get back to, our constitutional republic. and we have to get back to the rule of law and amend the Constitution if you don't like something. But don't go around legislating around it and piling so many rules and bureaucratic weight on it that you're bastardizing the original law. So we've put so much junk around the doctor-patient relationship. The doctors don't want to stay in one spot because they are offered more money. Doctors like myself have businessmen from the hospital corps come by offering me god-awful amounts of money to sell my practice and to be absorbed into some cushy environment and parties. I won't do it. I won't do it. I won't have their pharmaceutical reps come here, and I won't sell out my practice. And I'll do this until I'm the last of the Mohicans. I'll be that girl that jumps off the cliff rather than give up. So that's who I am, and you are the reason why. Carol Travis says, prayerfully, thank you. Thank you, Carol, for your prayers. Harlow Spencer says, after explant of implants, I've been reading that a woman should wait at least 3 months after explant to start detoxing. Is that correct? What is your recommendation? Well, I think explanting is a detoxing in itself. I personally have seen women immediately after their breast implants were removed, and we started detoxing immediately. I don't see any problem with that. So I'm all for detoxing at any moment of any time. And Harlow goes on to say, what do you think of taking Arnica before and after surgery? Yes, well, Arnica is a herb that is associated with reducing of the bruising and the fragility of the capillaries and so forth that leak out red blood cells and so forth. So I don't see any problem with using Arnica, especially after surgery. What else do you recommend to prevent inflammation and bruising? Well, if you're on systemic enzymes, Vitalzyme, proteozyme, or Vascuzyme, I would stop at 4 or 5 days before surgery because it will promote a little bit of thinning, and the capillaries will ooze a little more and leakage, so there could be a little more bruising. But the day after surgery, I would use it double the dose for 2 weeks. And frankly, I would go into any surgery with a 24-hour fast. And after surgery, I would fast another 24 hours because that stimulates growth hormone and repair. So that's how I would do it. Don't take the systemic enzymes 4 days before surgery, but double them up or even triple them up on an empty stomach immediately, within 12, 24 hours after surgery. So you get a good disinflaming clean out of the debris and inflammation from that. So Harlow says, love your story. Well, praise God about that. Let's see, is there anything else here? Up on our website, I have what I wrote a year and a half ago, 2 years ago. It's called My Rationale in the Use of EDTA Chelation Therapy for My Patients with Multiple Chronic Diseases. Because if you understand that your capillaries are your connection to helping every cell in your body, you'll understand why chelation is so important. One of the references I have, I have so many references in the back here, page after page after pages of references. One of them was so fantastic, I decided to make it available to everyone. It's called EDTA Chelation Therapy for the Treatment of Neurotoxicity. Neurotoxicity. And what he's getting at is all these MRIs and all these CAT scans and all these imaging studies that inject gadolinium into you is a heavy metal toxin. And I'm telling you, I've talked with surgeons and physicians, and they had no idea all these gadolinium containing dyes were damaging them. So I would say my suggestion to you would be get this into the hands of your doctors. It's called EDTA Chelation Therapy for the Treatment of Neurotoxicity. It was published in the International Journal of Molecular Sciences in January 10th of 2019 by Dr. Fulgenzi, Fulgenzi. It's a fantastic article. And he actually uses some research there where he talks about them having rats. And these rats had their renal arteries ligated, clamped off. And those rats that had an infusion of EDTA chelation before surgery, and then they clamped off the renal arteries, and then they sacrificed the rats, those who did not get chelation before surgery but had their arteries clamped off to their kidneys, and then those who got the chelation and their arteries clamped off. Then they looked at them a day later or so, and they saw that the oxidative damage from the lack of blood flow to the kidneys showed them all breaking down in the ones that didn't get the chelation. And those that got the chelation had almost no notable capillary damage. So the secondary capillary support was still there. So it basically saying, if you want to survive trauma, surgery, a hypoxic episode, a near drowning, whatever, you want to be someone who is always chelating. So it was just rather amazing how they don't let you know these things exist. So let's see. I think what I'll do is I'll give myself a little break. We'll end now. It's 6:53, so we've been here about 53 minutes. And I will see you next Monday at 6 o'clock. If there's any news or big article, I'll try and bring it in. I want to thank you all. And please like and subscribe. Share this with your family and friends. And continue to pray for me to find good doctors. And bless you and us. And good night, we say to you. Thank you.